Hey there, beautiful people. Welcome to Reclaiming Soul Work Podcast. We are so glad you are here. Make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll help amazing folks like you find us. And we really want to continue to grow our spiritual therapist and practitioner space so that more folks who are committed to helping Black QT plus individuals heal can find us. And we can't do it without your support. So thank you for being in community. Make sure you like and subscribe that button so you're staying connected. And if you really want to stay connected with us outside of, this channel, you might want to sign up now to our free monthly newsletter, First Quarter Moon, to stay updated on news, offerings, events, and more. Each month, we also do deep dives into certain topics that we know matter to you as spiritual therapists and practitioners. So sign up on our website at reclaimingsoulworkpod.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Reclaiming Soul Work and TikTok at Reclaiming Soul Work. All right, y'all.
Welcome back, spiritual practitioners. This season, we're centering learning.
That's right. We're your hosts, Biani and Sequoia, and we're here to delve into the heart of our conversations, focusing on the lack of culturally rooted resources to support QTBIPOC folks navigating religious and spiritual trauma.
In our previous seasons, we emphasized the importance of unlearning, decolonizing, and divesting from oppressive teachings and institutions. If you're new here, welcome, and make sure to check out our previous episodes on our channel. Now, we're dedicated to deepening our knowledge and understanding so that we can better support ourselves and our clients.
As we navigate this season of learning, we aim to provide you with the tools, tips, and insights to help you on your path of reclaiming to soul work.
Whether you're well versed in spiritual practices or just beginning your journey, join us as we explore the intersectional impact of religious and spiritual trauma on mental health.
So sit back, relax, and get ready to elevate your understanding of mental health and spiritual well-being as we embark on this season of learning. Let's get started.
We back.
We back, y'all. We are so happy to be here. We're sort of hype, really, because we've been wanting to have this conversation for a minute, and we're sort of diving into spiritual assessment tools. We're talking about the ones that exist, and we're talking about the ones that we feel really would be right for supporting Black QT folks who are ready to heal from religious trauma and spiritual abuse. And really, what really prompted us to have this episode is that we've been noticing that many religious trauma therapeutic approaches fail to account for the diverse experiences of those who are navigating and healing from Black QT plus religious trauma. And, it's true, there is support out there. There's support out there, right, for religious trauma. But truthfully, all that support still really centers the experiences of white folks and mainstream religions. And it still continues to leave Black QT folks out of the conversation, QT BIPOC folks and Black QT folks. Mm-hmm. And, for us, we're dedicating this episode to talking about those religious trauma assessment tools that exist, and then offering a tool that we think works, which is one of our tools that we're going to be talking about today. And also, continuing to make space about centering the experiences of Black QT plus survivors of religious trauma and the unique experience of Black, queer, trans, religious trauma. So, yeah, we here. Let's get into it. Did you want to add anything, Sequoia?
I think that you did a great, kind of introduction for us. I will say that, we've been talking about, these kind of topics We've shared our spiritual assessment tool in a previous event that we had, right? And, we've talked about some aspects of this as well in our intersectional conversations on religious trauma episodes. So if folks are, looking for like additional ways to just hear more about this topic, like we have those episodes where I think, gives a little bit more context to what we're highlighting related to assessment tools. And I'm excited to talk about it because, you know, there aren't a lot of conversations about these things. And yeah, we've just been exploring this, I would say, in our own practices. And so wanted to, bring this to you all to see like what your thoughts were about the assessment tools. One of the things that I had wrote down in my notes that maybe we'll circle back to, but it's a little call to action. I completed the assessment tools that we're getting ready to talk about. I completed them for myself, so for anybody that's out there that's, interested in the tools that we're talking about, try it for yourself. See how, see what your score is. It gives you all the information that you need. And then, yeah, maybe use it as a baseline.
Great. So yeah, we're really so hyped to get into it. But if you haven't already, make sure you like this episode and subscribe to our channel so other people like you can find us. So make sure you do that right now. Like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so that you know when future episodes are about to go on. And so before we continue, this is a shout out to social workers. If you're looking to integrate Black feminist principles into your practice, then look no further because my friend Sequoia of Red Linen Moon Wellness is offering a workshop in October just for you. And it's called Integrating Black Feminist Social Work Principles and Values. And it's happening on October 23rd, 2024 from noon from 12 to 1 p.m. And it's free to register, but you really, really, really got to sign up. You got to sign up today. Head over to tinyurl.com/BFS work to register today. And if you register, shout out to social worker CEUs are available. So you don't really want to miss out on that. And real talk, y'all, I don't know anybody that's really talking about Black feminist social work perspectives and principles. And so, you definitely going to have to check out this workshop. Shout out to Sequoia on that. All right, I'm done.
Well, I guess this is the part where I'm supposed to jump in. So I will do that. We just want to welcome y'all again and remind everyone that is listening that Reclaiming Soul Work is a heart-centered podcast by two queer Black femme healers and spiritual social workers who explore the intersection of magic, spirituality, mental health, and everything in between. My name is Sequoia. I use she and her pronouns. I wear a lot of different hats, but grateful to be here with you all tonight, chopping it up on the Reclaiming Soul Work podcast. My big three are I'm an Aquarius sun, a Aries moon, and a Libra rising. And I was just thinking about this the other day. Just having a fire energy center moon sign and then having two air signs as my other big three is really interesting because is there isn't a lot of like grounded energy in that, right? It's fire and then it's air. And so with that moon energy being fire center, that air just stokes the fire. And so, I usually have to like be very mindful and intentional about where my emotions are because that those two air signs, it just will definitely just, yeah, like stoke the fire. And then on the other side of things, I can also be very just airy, so not at times action oriented, so yeah, those are some of the things that I was thinking about the other day related to the big three and like how it ties into personality. And I think Biani, we must have lost Biani. I know that they were having some issues with their internet right before we had signed on. We've been meeting right before our live streams, and the internet was kind of going in and out during our meetings. So I'm sure that is kind of what has happened. Um, but we will continue on until Biani is able to join us back again. Um, and so usually in this part, we're also doing things like share and tell. I, of course, forgot to bring something for share and tell. I was kind of looking around to see if I had anything kind of close to me. But I don't have anything for this week. I know Biani um wanted to share with you all one of their books. And so I'm sure when they come back on, they will definitely talk a little bit more about that. I, yeah, no, I don't have anything that I want to share. But I'm really excited to talk about spiritual assessment tools. Again, Biani and I talked before we hopped on for the live stream about, this topic just very briefly because we like to come on with like fresh perspectives, to chat with you all about. So we just briefly talked about, how excited we were to talk about this. One, because, again, it's usually one, religious trauma, spiritual abuse isn't a topic that is, talked about in a lot of spaces like therapists, mental health practitioners, spiritual therapists, kind of spaces. But then the assessment tools that folks are using, in those spaces is also a topic that, I don't hear too much chatter about. In the Facebook groups, therapist center, religious trauma therapist center, Facebook groups. I really haven't seen too much about spiritual assessment tools. There's definitely like book recommendation asks and things like that. But we have two that we're going to talk about today. One is called the Spiritual Assessment and Harm Screener, the clinical screener, and then the other one is the Religious Trauma Inventory. And I think that they are both just really good general examples of, like what's out there related to spiritual assessment tools. um and I think that they are a good place to start, but there's definitely like more that could, you know, come from both of these tools. There's definitely some adaptations that, you know, would be really helpful related to those tools. And let me see, I'm just gonna check my phone really quickly to see. Biani hasn't texted me. But as it relates to the assessment tool, one of the things that I really wanted to talk more about was here's Biani. Here you are.
Love that.
I was just going on and on and on.
Good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad that this doesn't stop the show.
Oh, well, we missed you. We missed you. We were
Oh,
ready for you to come back for
for
sure.
real. Oh,
Yeah.
whew. I am here. Okay.
Okay. So I had kind of started to get into a little bit about the different assessment tools. And so, we had kind of, you had dropped off at the place where was given the big three and, just checking in. I mentioned that I didn't have anything for share and tell, but I'm sure that you did and that you wanted to share that with folks. So wherever you want to pick up, you know.
Oh, yeah. Hey, everybody. Kiani, she, they pronouns. I'm a therapist, I'm a doula, like an educator, professor, and I'm an unschooling mama. Um, my big three Virgo sun, Aries moon, and Cancer rising. And I did just have a birthday. So that shout out to the Virgos and welcome to Libra season. But yeah, there's so much that, I mean, I feel like a lot of my share and tell today is going to be connected to these two books. So this one's the Religious Trauma Survival Guide. I've been reading it all weekend and it's been really good so far. I mean, I have critiques of it, but all important. And then I'm almost done with this one finally, When Religion Hurts You. And we mentioned this book before, but yeah, I think what I've really been learning is a lot around how folks conceive of religious trauma, like how they talk about it, how they think about it. And yeah, I have so many thoughts about that. About how they think about it, who gets left out, who's included, and things like that. So yeah, I think these are still books that are worth it if you're interested in religious trauma. And especially if you're a survivor, you might really like this one. Therapists, practitioners, but also those who are folks navigating religious trauma might really enjoy this. And I am really playing around with tarot again, or like some decks, but they're not nowhere near me. So I feel like, what's the point? um, they're in my altar, but yeah, I'm excited about October too. Like just kind of this liminal space, and
I
so
know.
yeah.
It's so interesting you say that. I'm excited for spooky season this year for some reason.
Mm,
And like you were mentioning tarot, getting back into tarot, I have like I guess taken a very like stark like no buy tarot cleanse. I haven't bought any tarot decks like in a while. And
mm.
I guess I feel some kind of way about that. Cause I was, I feel really, I enjoy them. I feel connected to, tarot and oracle decks. And then, I definitely had to like slow down with how many I was buying.
Oh yeah. I mean, we definitely, it's whew, yeah, there's a lot. I haven't bought a deck in a while either, if I can be honest. It's been a while. I've just been wanting to play with my decks, and I try to support like independent decks, like Kickstarters, but lately I've just been donating to it and not like consuming another deck. But yeah, shout out to us tarot babes, who are really into tarot. And maybe you're not like me and Sequoia and you want to buy a deck. Like right now, I have decks on sale because I'm such a like collector of the tarot
Right.
that there are things that I feel like, especially during spooky season and this season, I feel like ancestral season, I tend to call it, like, or ancestor season. I actually have like a little shop on my website for those who are really interested in building their toolkit. So if you're like a therapist or practitioner or tarot enthusiast and you want some dope tarot decks, I have a great shop of indie decks that you are welcome to check out. They're on sale right now. You can check out my shop, guidinginsights.com/store, where I stock a range of out of print and independently produced tarot decks. I haven't bought a deck, but I am selling them. And, I'll say too, what I've been playing around with in terms of, I've been playing around with queer tarot a lot. And I've also been playing around with, um, what's the one that I just started? Oh, I've been going back to like Rider Waite clones again. So I'm playing around with this deck that somebody made on, like, I don't know, this playing card is all like lilac and pastel. I kind of like the Rider Waite clones sometimes, just when I'm wanting to connect with the system again. Um, but yeah, I feel like this is the time, to be able to, I feel like more intuitively connected to myself too. I feel really connected to myself around this time. Um, and maybe that's true for you too, y'all. Like, let us know in the comments how you're feeling right now in this season. I'm excited for like horror movies. I'm just excited about October. And hey, we can start now watching all the great movies. Okay, that was a long ramble. But yes, that's it. Check out my shop, selling some cool tarot decks. And yeah, I haven't bought anything, but I did finally. I actually backed a new deck though that I've been waiting on for a minute. I think it was the deck. It was supposed to be like the Octavia Butler tarot deck, but I think the name now is Lineages of Change.
Mm,
And I've been waiting for that deck for a minute. I did back that one. That's probably the only deck I bought in a couple months. I did back
okay.
starter.
Yeah, I was trying to think. The last deck that I bought was the Infleshed deck.
Ooh.
That's the last one. Hmm.
Oh my gosh.
What? Oh, Bianna, you still there?
Internet. Sorry. The Inflesh deck has been incredible for readings for my clients.
Oh, I
Last
bet. I
last week I got the
bet.
chills. I pulled a card for a client. We were just talking about stuff, and then they were like, "Let's pull some cards," and I'm all right, shuffling, and the first card just like right there, just got to the heart of it. And I think this deck is like that. It's very,
Mm-hmm,
it just gets
mm-hmm.
to the heart of it. It
Yeah,
doesn't, no frills, no like, easing you in. It's gonna give you the truth right
yeah,
there. So I
yeah.
love this deck. Shout out to Inflesh. This is an amazing oracle. I love it. All right. So, let's just get into it. We've been getting into it, but let's just continue the conversation. Um, and
Oh,
I'm back. I don't
what you
know.
say, Bianni?
Do you want to give us some more context around like why we're centering assessment tools today?
Oh, yes, I already did.
Oh, you did? Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were gone.
I missed the whole thing.
It's
Um,
okay.
so, if I feel like there's this part of me that has a little like reaction to anytime I say assessment tools.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
I'm aware of that today.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's just making me think of our profession a lot, just kind of the way we've been programmed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I think it's a yes and for me, like I feel some kind of way about some assessment tools as well, and I understand like they can be so helpful, with identifying some things, putting some language to things for people, or, as a conversation starter for other things in session, So it's like, it's a lot, and then the piece about evidence-based practices and things like that, it's definitely complicated.
Right, because we think we know that a lot of the quote unquote assessment tools that seem to get the most attention are quote unquote evidence based.
Mm-hmm,
They've been researched,
mm-hmm,
well studied, and but who are they researching? Who's included and who's excluded? Right? Who's left out of that? And who
yeah.
gets to define it? Who gets to define the. Um, why do we feel like it's important for us to like you know consider assessment tools when it comes to related
Mm-hmm,
trauma?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think for the reasons that I just mentioned, like having a place to highlight things that, maybe folks hadn't considered about a particular issue, topic, challenge, you know, having a like conversation starter or a place to like jump off from, in session, just asking like, oh, I see you responded this way, can you tell me more about that, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking right now. What you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it really helps frame like our
Mm-hmm.
focus. And I also
Mm-hmm.
know that for us too, us at Reclaiming Soul Work, like we really feel like assessment tools can also serve as a like a self-reflection aid for
Mm-hmm.
practitioners. And in a way it's like important accountability for us. Because I think there are ways that we use assessment tools that can be really culturally irresponsible. And I think when we I think a lot of times when we're using assessment tools through an intersectional lens, being really culturally responsive, understanding like spirituality, not just quote unquote faith or religion, like considering assessment tools that are inclusive and are trauma informed and are centered on the folks that we are supporting and holding space for, I find those are the ones that I'm drawn to,
Yeah,
the ones that
sure.
do some space for like self-reflection, accountability. Um, and yeah, let us know the assessment tools that you're drawn to. If you're like a spiritual therapist or practitioner, like which ones are the ones that stand out to you that you are really drawn to. And if you know of any like spiritual or religious trauma assessment tools, let us know that too. Um, but yeah, I'm actually often drawn to the ones that center Black QT folks
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
attempt to.
Yeah, and I would imagine that that's not a lot. There,
Yes.
that's a handful of things. Yeah, one of the other things that I would also kind of love to get into is like the tools themselves. So when you had dropped off, related to the internet, I had brought up the spiritual abuse and harm screener and then the religious trauma inventory. And, those are the two that we specifically looked at that, if you just Google, folks will be able to pull those up and
Mhm.
find those.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, should we get into like our thoughts about each one of those?
Yeah, let's get it. Yeah, you're right. Come on, let's do it. Yeah. um,
Or you think we should go in a different direction?
no, I like the idea of starting with the assessment tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody on Instagram said all through grad school, I made sure to point out the lack of inclusion with assessment. That leads me to taking more of an integrated response where narrative meets clinical meets
Mm.
cultural implications.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I,
Mhm.
and I like that because it reminds us too. I think sometimes people, at least in social work, people sort of separate macro from micro. And I think our responsibility as those doing like direct service or micro, quote unquote, micro clinical work, our duty is to bring in the liberatory perspective and the
Absolutely.
critical lens. Like, and we do that in our assessments. And we do that in like the centering of the fact that a lot of these assessments we're using or being taught are exclusionary.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it makes a lot of assumptions about who these tools can support. It makes a lot of assumptions.
I like the way you put that. Can you say some more about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can go into these assessment tools, but I think a lot about um, the Beck depression inventory tool, like just assessment tools that I'm often you know, having to work with in my practice, and like, well, not like in my work, and always feeling like, okay, how do we know, does this help the communities we say that we're working with? Like, we like kind of make it universal, and we assume that that everybody gets to like be addressed and everybody's needs get to be met. Um, and often, like other things, I think assessment tools tend to be universalized.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
often that means white. It's assumed white. Like if
Definitely.
enough white people were studied in their evidence-based research, then we can replicate that tool with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
which brings me to the spiritual, one of the screeners, the one that we've been reading, the spiritual harm and abuse scale. And it was actually a study that was done in 2022. And you can find it on the person, Dan Koch, PsyD, their website. I don't know what pronouns they use, so I'm saying they. But just even the people in their study, you know, like just when you want to find out about an assessment tool, you find out what research was done, right, to build this assessment. You know, who was the audience, and it's interesting just looking at the population. 87% were white, and 82% were straight. And there's no queer, trans, gender expansive. Those people weren't studied. So it was like what, 51% cis female, 41% cis male, straight and white. And I think a lot of times I found even in our groups, like Facebook groups or whatever, like we're talking about all these assessments we want to use. And I feel like a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, why are we using these assessments? Who are these for? Who's being left out? Do they really resonate with the folks that we are working with? And I would say it often doesn't really resonate with our folks, with Black QT folks. And a lot of times Sequoia and I talk about how we're, um, you know, creating our own kind of mini assessments a lot of times to meet the needs of our folks. That's where I'll stop.
Yeah, I appreciate, you sharing about that particular assessment tool. I'm wondering if there's like, was there, so like you mentioned the numbers for who was researched,
Who was studying?
the kind of um the majority of the sample population for the research. Was there anything else about that scale, like just in your experience with looking at it, that you found interesting, challenging, you were good with?
I mean, the study population was largely white Protestant, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I actually thought the scale was really like compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really liked the my pastor or leader explicitly claiming to speak on God's behalf. I think that was really interesting. I haven't seen it even in the religious trauma inventory or in the books that I've been reading. They say it, but it's not like that explicit. I really like that. Being shunned or ignored, being pressured to forgive an abuser. Like some of the questions here I really thought were really good.
Yeah.
At the same time, you know, there were things that I felt like were missing. Um, I like that they had a critique of Christian churches. I haven't seen that in a
Yeah. I thought that was interesting too, that they specifically said Christian church in the screener itself.
right. And they even had a question: I was treated less than because of my race or sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, this is the thing, and all the like religious trauma assessment tools is only one question though. It's like that one little question. It's like
Mm-hmm.
one question, and in their mind, they're being inclusive. It's one
Mm-hmm.
question. Have you
Mm-hmm.
been, you know, discriminated against because of your race and sexual orientation? In the inventory tool here that I read, it was the same kind of flavor. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you were taught that being gay or trans is wrong. That was the only question. Like, it's like a little sprinkle, you know, which I still am concerned about. Like, I don't think that's the full breadth of the religious trauma and spiritual abuse that Black QT folks experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I did really like that, like just focusing on the experience of being in a church. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
pretty powerful, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something we've always talked about in our episodes. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the forms of pulpit abuse and the harm in like the actual church spaces, right? And so
Yeah.
this is the only screener I've found that has actually been critical of the system, the actual institution,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was really helpful. And we need more
Okay.
assessment tools like that, you know?
Yeah. Yes, I can appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I will say that I found the way that this assessment was structured was good. I like the range of questions, kind of the same thing that I was saying. I could see how folks could use this assessment to like have a jumping off point to have other further conversations about things. um One of the other things that I was wondering about was that second set of questions that they ask, where it goes into like the Christian church part. Like my question was, do therapists feel comfortable exploring nuances of the second set of statements provided? So like, yeah, those assessment questions are on there, and like if you're not comfortable to further explore that,
Mm,
like the race question, for instance, with people, like, sure, you can ask that question and they can respond, but if you don't feel comfortable like going into that, like that's where it
right,
can end or stay, like
right.
that aspect of folks experience. um I also found the scoring interpretations interesting.
Ooh, I didn't tally. I need to tally them. What did
But
you
just
find?
even but just even the descriptions,
Oh yeah, yes, yes.
just how they give the instructions for how you can interpret the score, I thought was interesting. And then the categories, the subscales, so like
Mm,
controlling leadership, internal distress, like those categories are very interesting. And then I was wondering, like, okay, so if people are, like falling within these
mm,
subscales, what intervention are folks like? I just wonder, like, what kind of intervention are folks assigning? Like, let's say if you fall under like controlling leadership, under that score.
mm.
So,
Yes, yeah, that's a really good
mhm,
point. No, that's a really good point. I'm looking at it differently now. And for those who are tuning in, make sure to download. It's called Spiritual Harm and Abuse Scale. You can find it for free. Um, and come back to the episode and look at it with us. Like it's true. There's some things I'm like, how does this?
mhm,
What happens after? Like once we collect
yeah,
this information,
yeah,
how do we use it?
yep. Let me see. Okay. So anything else about that particular one, or do you want to go to the religious trauma inventory?
Ooh, I really like the 6 factors in this scale, like the 6 factors that they were focusing on. And it had me thinking how we need assessment tools that talk about the impact of race, racial discrimination, and homophobia and like queer antagonism. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was like, okay. And we don't have there, I have not found an assessment tool. And look, friends, if y'all are tuning in and you're like, hey, I found it, but I have not found an assessment tool. And this is probably why we're gonna make one. But like I have not found an assessment tool that highlights the sort of unique experiences of like, transphobia, homophobia, and like, cis heteropatriarchy, like those kind of experiences of being in the church.
Yes.
pulpit abuse,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
white supremacy, racial discrimination, like those kind of unique experiences.
Yeah.
But I did like the way that I liked how they built upon the scale, though, like this assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah,
Shall we move on to the religious
trauma
trauma
inventory.
inventory?
Sure.
Okay. So this one you found as well. And I thought that it was again just another example of um an assessment tool that could be helpful to like have conversations. You know, I looked at like basically again the scoring interpretations, and it's like if you have more than five, then you've been impacted, by religious trauma. And so I think, yeah, that this one gets is like if we have a scale of like nuance, I think the first scale, the spiritual abuse and harm scale, was nuanced, but I think the religious trauma inventory is a step further in nuance, so it's like it's pushing some edges. They're both pushing the edges. We got a little bit of ways to go, though. We got to keep going, you know
Yeah, like I agree. um, Glad that these inventories and assessments exist, but I'm also like some of the things that come to me too are um, I was brought up to believe that God is white, or like, you know, I was brought up to believe that being queer was demonic. Like there's things like that I felt like let's really get into it in terms of like the depth of the harm that folks really witness, or um, it wasn't okay to like show like present a feminine, like gender expression wasn't valued or considered, or was frowned upon.
yeah.
I mean, I did like the questions here, that they're really general, but I don't know if after you count and you say, oh, I don't know if, or like I can't imagine Black QT folks filling out this inventory and feeling like, okay, like it's something
Yeah.
about it that feels there's a unique and distinct experience that we
Mhm.
navigate,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Black
It's
religious
like
trauma.
it's like it doesn't click all the way.
Yeah, it's true. Yep, it's very true. It still leaves, and this is, I wonder if a lot of this is true for why it's hard to find therapists um, who can speak to Black religious trauma, Black QT
Mhm.
plus trauma, religious trauma. Um, I think there's a lot of spaces where folks don't know how to support clients, and we hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Sequoia and I hear it all the time. Like people are just like, I don't know how to support folks who are like leaving, who had to leave the religion that they grew up in, or they
Yeah.
were shunned or excommunicated or disfellowship. Like there are so many therapists and practitioners who are like, I don't know what to do. And I think I really like the first assessment scale the assessment that we highlighted, but at the same time, it's like folks need more, like spiritual therapists,
Mhm.
practitioners need more when it
Yeah.
comes to Black QT religious trauma. And
Yeah.
it's like it kind of like it scratches the surface, but it don't break. Like it's right, it's like right
Yeah.
there, it's still right there
Yeah.
at the surface.
It's all very what's the word that gets used a lot in the religious traumas? Like high control. It's all very like high control
Religion,
centered.
yeah.
Like the questions or the statements in the inventory, like it's all kind of breaking down or like get into like that as the, I don't know, the issue or the fear or concern. And that's, as we kind of transition into this other piece around maybe like what do we feel like could help these assessments. And I think that we've already kind of started this conversation, like what kind of adaptations would be helpful. Yeah, like those are some of the things that I was thinking about. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention?
Yeah. I mean, I think those are the ones that are striking for me. But
Yeah.
um, I think part of why we created our assessment tool, like I think these assessment tools is true. Even in what I've been reading, it's a focus on high control religion,
Mhm.
and it's a focus on control as a form of abuse and power, which is
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not to discount it. But we're also holding that people like Black QT plus folks have experiences in high control religions, and they also have experiences in religions that are not high control but can still be harmful and abusive. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the discourse of religious trauma focuses on like HCRs, ex evangelicals, sort of this like particular type of Christian, like high control religion, high control Christianity, um, that I don't know if it really includes, yeah, the Black QT folks experience. Like it's making me think about something that Robert said when he, and please check out the episode where Robert Munson it's on our channel around his experiences of being a Black atheist and an ex-evangelical, where there are like experiences that Black QT folks navigate in these religions that are also rooted in like anti-Blackness. And I'm like, how do we make an assessment tool that acknowledges that, that speaks to that too? Um, the sort of harms of being told that God doesn't like, you know, Black people who venerate ancestors, and, you know, quote unquote cis women should be wearing pants, and I mean shouldn't be wearing pants, and if they do they're gay, or like that kind of experience of trauma. Like there's nothing that speaks to like the sort of nuances that Black QT plus folks have to navigate. um, and for us that's like the juicy, the meat, you know, this is like the bun, but we're trying to get
Yeah.
the meat.
Definitely. Yeah. I Let's see. When I was like, this kind of picks back up from what we were just talking about related to the disconnect between some of the questions or the statements and the inventory tools. It's like it's right, like it's kind of there, but it's not like clicking all the way, with the questions. And as I was like reading through them, I'm like, okay, what the clicking, like what's not resonating for me when I read through some of these things, which is kind of again like to that call to action that I mentioned at the top for folks to actually like take the spiritual assessment tool yourself and like see where you score and things like that. um the fears, the anxieties that are mentioned in these tools, I don't connect to those fears. Like I feel like depending on what type of how you identify, related to either being Black or BIPOC, some of these statements don't resonate with like the fears of the things that we believe in. And so I'm like, okay, what are some, like what kind of statements would I want to see on a tool that reflects my fears, my concern as somebody that practices, a culturally responsive spiritual practice, right? So some of the things that I came up with were like fear of like not doing a ritual right or completely, anxiety about how much it costs for some of these initiation ceremonies,
Mm.
with different practices, and systems. Fear of like, and like you mentioned ancestors at the beginning, right? So like fear of ancestors being upset with me, like disapproving, of something that I did, being punished by my ancestors, things like that.
Mm.
um what else? Fear of pissing another practitioner off, and they throwing something at me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
fear of other spirits and entities, based on whatever my practice is. So like to me, the tools need to reflect these fears. Like
Right.
this is not what's clicking for me. So I was wondering like what you thought about some of those.
Oh my gosh, that's so dope. I'm like, what? Because I was thinking, if we can hold, I'm realizing too that these tools that I found were focused on Christianity. So that speaks to the limitation. When we're thinking about religious trauma, we're also wanting to expand religious trauma, the understanding of religious trauma. And a lot of the discourse is very much focused on high control Christian religions. So that already has limitations, I would argue, even though people would argue, oh, Christianity is one of the largest, quote unquote, which is not true, but that's how people talk. Like I've asked people like, well, why is it that we're focusing on Christianity? And people are like, well, it's the most popular, I'm like, is it though? But anyway, um, I think this idea of a God image comes up for me when you're saying that. And
Mm-hmm.
this idea that there's a one God, or like, to me, like something around that is speaking to me, or this idea that like God is carceral, punishing,
Yeah.
judgmental.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that often. And I think that's interesting. Like we just assume that the God that people worship or are in reverence to, like it's mono God, and the God is gendered and they are carceral and punishing.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and that ancestral veneration is demonic. Like there's nothing around that here.
This.
There's no
This.
yeah, there's no criticism, there's no space around that, which I think could be really traumatizing for people if they grew up in a religion that was pretty controlling, told them what to think, what to wear, how to be. It's making me think of Goddess. The episode with Goddess was really great. They were somebody who escaped from a Jehovah's Witness, and their experience of like reclaiming their desires and their sexuality. And yeah, I never, even the questions about sexuality I've noticed in these two scales are not
Expansive at
expensive
all.
at all.
Yeah, and I would say like that is a huge place of like needing to uncover, and assess.
Yep.
Because I think that is like that's a place of high control for Black people. Like I
Right.
think that maybe that's what it is too. It's like maybe in white spaces the high control is not over the same. I mean, I don't know. I think white people are very stifled related to sexuality, which is why a lot of these white men, who are always talking about gay people and gay agendas and this, that, and the other, they be the ones that's gay.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yeah, right. That's true, right?
so I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good connection, but it's like maybe there are these certain parts that are high controlled in Black spaces, but then this gets back to, for me, like talking about these Facebook groups and I was thinking about re-listening to the intersectional conversation on religious trauma episode, the first one. And I talked about how in the Facebook groups, in the therapist Facebook groups, that I don't ever see anyone, any comments, any judgmental questions about things like the Quran or wearing hijab. But, in these Facebook groups, I see other Black therapists that have these judgmental posts or comments about, African traditional religions and the umbrella, right? Some type of spiritual practice related to something related to ATRs. And so it makes me think about this assessment, because if you have and I'm going to say a Black therapist that is doing an assessment, and, you're talking about your uh fear of letting your ancestors down, and you have this therapist who thinks that ancestors are demonic, but they take people who, are exploring religious trauma or have had these experiences in these other religions now, or don't identify as Christian. Now, their lens about your fear of letting your ancestor down is shaping the wellness support that you get around this. Oh, did Biani leave us again? No. Hey, you, Joe. Biani has been having some issues with their internet. Oh, yeah. And they just left us. We were actually like wrapping up this conversation on spiritual assessment tools. Here you are. We got we got to wrap this up. We got to wrap it up.
Yeah. I'm so
Friend, I'm
sorry. Yeah, I don't even
sorry.
know what to say. I don't
It's
know if it's the
okay.
rain. I don't know what's going on because it is raining.
Yeah, it's
Who
okay.
knows what
It's
it
all
is?
right. It's okay. I was like landing the plane. I was landing the
And
plane.
you was in your bag.
I
I was
was
like, yes,
listen.
let's
I
keep
was
going.
landing that plane, honey.
Go ahead. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Hey Ujo, what's
I
up,
don't even
friends?
remember. I was just basically saying that, like, if on these assessment tools we're identifying that a fear of some folks, uh, you know, a fear that some folks may have is displeasing their ancestors. And if you are in front of a therapist, a Black therapist, that feels like ancestors are demonic, and you're trying to talk to them about this fear that you have of letting your ancestors down, your wellness support is now coming through a lens from someone who thinks that your ancestors are demons.
Yes. Yeah. How come
You
we don't have?
know?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful point. And I think that's also what we've been wanting to talk about. That religious trauma. We need to expand the definition of religious trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
needs to consider
Mm-hmm.
all, like not just Christianity, right? But that I mean, I made me think about with sexuality. It's true, like we talk about purity culture only, and it's through the Christian lens, but we don't talk about the other forms of like sexual repression and
Right. 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 Yes. This is what we were talking about too, right before you dropped off as
right,
well. Yeah. That these assessment tools as well do not have expansive questions around sexuality, suppression of sexuality,
right,
or exploration of sexuality within these high control religion contexts, right? And so yeah, and that I think that is a place that Nikki and everybody in the
right,
Surviving the Black Church podcast, they brought up that specifically, that is a place that with folks who they've supported in their support groups, there is a lot of suppression around sexuality.
right. That there's not even a space. People don't even know how
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
reconnect, talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm, well, this is why so we created a spiritual assessment tool, and we are going to be creating many tools, y'all. So make sure you sign up to our newsletter, First Quarter Moon, because we are bringing in that heat. But one of the reasons why our first spiritual assessment tool that we shared with like a community of spiritual therapists and practitioners is focused on folks who are leaving their religions of their family of origin, because we're seeing this mass exodus of QT BIPOC folks who are like, listen, this religion isn't really serving me, and we need I need to go, right? And what we're noticing that happens with folks who are like saying that they're religious trauma practitioners, or people who are like spiritually based, faith based or whatnot, don't really know how to support folks who are in this transition, in this like kind of space of like, I'm leaving this family of origin religion, not sure where I'm headed next, but I know this doesn't feel right, you know? Um, and that there's like a reclamation process that happens, but it can't happen until we process or we make space for this, like, we're leaving, right? Like it's time for us to leave. And I think that's what I love most about our spiritual assessment tool, that it's a self-reflection aid for like those who are using it. So it's not just for your clients, it's also for you too. Like get in touch with your own experiences with your family of origin religion. You know, that's really important. And I think for a lot of QT BIPOC folks that are spiritual practitioners, we all have a story tied to the religion that we were born into or raised in. And us leaving is important, you know, and something that it's really important. And that's why we're creating that tool. We created this tool. And if you're interested in it, you know, sign up to the first quarter moon newsletter, because we're going to be sharing it with our subscribers. I was raised Christian and transitioned out of that religion about 15 years ago. See, and I'd be curious, right? In the transition out, did you feel more spiritually connected, right? Because like I think that there's something there around what does it mean for us to, this mass exodus is also about us reclaiming, you know, coming back to ourselves.
I love this conversation. For folks that are, either watching us now or a part of the replay gang, we're going to keep talking about assessment tools. We have some really fun announcements that we'll be making after the first of the year related to assessment tools. And so this is kind of our first formal conversation around this topic. And so there'll be, a few more to come, especially if this is your jam. I think that, this is just a good place to, like do some decolonizing work, tis the season. Tis the season.
Yes. I love that. 'Tis the season to do decolonizing work and deconstruction.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love this conversation. I cannot wait for our part 2 on this. I feel like I want to definitely talk more of highlight more of these fears that I was like throwing out and highlighting, like some of these places. I love everything that you shared as well, Biani, just including like the I guess this is like us uh informally moving into main takeaways as well. As always, thinking about like the books that you shared. I think that those are amazing resources as well for folks who might, need a starting place outside of the tools that we mentioned that you can Google and just find on the internet. The books that Biani, has shared over the past few weeks, I think are also like good starting 101 places.
Yeah.
So those are my takeaways.
I mean, one of my main takeaways is like get my internet right next time. I'm joking, but no, seriously. There's so much wisdom here that has been dropped that I'm sitting with the fears that you're talking about, how like a lot of these assessment tools need to address the fears, and also that it needs to expand to more, not like that we need to expand our definition of religious trauma. That really stayed with me, what you shared, as far as like this idea of, yeah, like what happens if the ancestors are demonic to your therapist, right? Like that, those are the tools we need to get in touch with too. Like we rely too heavily on these tools and we don't look at ourselves. So I'm really struck by our conversation around the role of sexuality and repression. Like there's just so many gems here that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to rewatch. And y'all, before we continue, these conversations we're having, we really feel like they're crucial and necessary. And so make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you share this episode with somebody you feel like might really resonate. The more folks that hear about the podcast and this episode, the more people that we can really get in touch with and build this spiritual therapist community. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel and share it with your people. Uh, yeah.
This was a really good episode. Um, I would like to thank everyone who has joined us here in the chat. Folks that watched us on Instagram as too. Like, thank you all for being with us today. We are going to keep this conversation going. Please share your thoughts or questions in the comment section. If you are watching this on YouTube, especially, please hit that like button, y'all. We know y'all be watching us. We see them views going up. We need some thumbs happening, okay? Help us out. Um, yeah, leave us some comments in the comment section. As I mentioned, we would love to hear from you. Our next episode is going to be in 2 weeks. I'm really excited about who we have coming on for our next episode. We're going to be talking about this idea that queer people can't be Christian, and why that is, where that belief kind of centers from, and yeah, like what are folks' thoughts on that? So I'm really excited for that one. What do you think about that one, Biani?
I'm so excited to
Yeah,
talk to Black queer Christians. And just like for us, is about making space for those who don't get centered. And so yeah, I'm hype about that episode. I'm hype about our guests. um and I'm also hype about some things that we're kind of like cooking for y'all. um so make sure you stay connected. And yeah, I'm excited. So make sure that you rewatch this episode if you need to, and get your assessment tools, y'all. Yes, Ujo, yes, get your tea ready for our next episode.
yeah, it's gonna
And
be
get your questions ready too.
good.
Please get your questions ready.
Yeah, it's gonna
I think you're going to really love our guest.
mhm.
So we're really grateful to just really be here with y'all and being community. Sequoia and I have been working hard on Reclaiming Soul Work for quite a while. We've been here, y'all. And we are really dedicated. Excuse me. We're a dedicated podcast by two queer Black femme healers and spiritual social workers who explore the intersection of magic, spirituality, mental health, and everything in between. We can't say this enough. Your views, your likes, your subscriptions really spread the word of the
Yeah,
work. So keep sharing with your people. You subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can set a reminder for notifications when we release an episode. You can sign up to our newsletter on our landing page on our website. And make sure to follow us on socials too. And we can't wait to see y'all next time.
thank you, everybody.